Guys, do you know who Gary McKinnon was? Those who do, leave it here in the comments, okay? For many of you, this name may even sound familiar. However, many of you were also too young when this case happened to remember it easily today. That's because this event took place in the year 2002, when Gary McKinnon was involved in the biggest scandal of his life, which nearly resulted in him being extradited to the United States, where he would face a life sentence. Yeah, you've already seen that today's tale is no small one, right? But before we continue this whole story, leave your like down below. Don't subscribe to forget, and come with me. Because I'm Tiago Tadeo, and welcome to the Upside Down. Precedence. Gary McKinnon was just the systems administrator who worked directly with IT, being responsible for taking care of the networks and servers of the places where he was employed. However, Gary wasn't content with just these professional techniques. In fact, he was very fascinated by hacker culture. So, when he wasn't working, Gary McKinnon spent virtually all of his spare time learning and practicing his hacking skills, breaking into unsuspecting computers all over the world. The incident. However, guys, everything changed in the year 2001, days after the United States suffered the terrorist attacks on the Twin Towers. This, of course, in New York. When the attack took place, many communities and online forums began to question the role of the US government in this, especially hackers, who already understood how the flow of information had already changed their generation. It wasn't the first time that American citizens had gone through an attack that could have been avoided too. Of course, to create a certain commotion among the people there, and thus cause a possible war, right? A good example has already been confirmed of this type of practice by the United States government during the Pearl Harbor attack, where information about the attack had already been coded a week in advance, and instead of evacuating the base of soldiers and civilians, including the elderly and children, the government chose only to remove its most valuable vessels and then use the tragedy there, justifying another situation, right? So, when a similar attack happened right under your nose, in an era where access to information was 1,000,000 times greater, it made many people, especially hackers, see the government in a threatening way and use their skills to try to understand what in fact had happened moments before the attack. At the time, Gary McKinnon had no idea, but his decision would eventually lead to his fame as the hacker who carried out the biggest attack on military computers in US history, family. Yeah, it's no small thing, right? Digital attack. After a lot of planning and social engineering, Gary McKinnon was ready to launch his attack just a year later in 2002. The break-in took a few hours, but Gary McKinnon was able to gain access and control to no less than 97 computers from the United States Pentagon, Army, Navy, and Air Force, as well as some computers from the Department of Defense and even the NASA family. In addition, his invasion was very discreet. That is, no one realized that he had this level of access to computers, on which Gary McKinnon managed to remain acting in secret for more than a year, preparing for a variety of horrors with the machines. For example, one day, one of these machines was temporarily connected to a military network, probably during a file backup session to a network parallel to the internet, which is safer for them, right? However, during the small window of access, Gary was able to invade this network also through a contaminated computer, invading the server with more than 2,000 connected Army computers, where he deleted all of the files of the operating systems of each of these computers, bringing the network down for over a month. He also kept tampering with file information, such as the amount of equipment that should be purchased to defend bases across the country. For example, a base should receive 4,000 rifles and 20,000 ammunition for them. Gary would change the order, and at the last minute, make it 20 rifles and 500 ammunition arrive. And no one at the base understood how this could be happening, but as they were orders and files, they had to be carried through, right? He also messed with the Army's plans, causing an entire Navy fleet to be sent out on nonsensical missions around the world, which they only discovered the trip was a mistake days later. At another time, he accessed a military network with 300 machines and made the network go down like the previous time. Finally found. Gary McKinnon was a very skilled hacker. He knew how to hide his tracks very well. However, he ended up making some crucial mistakes that eventually led to him being identified and discovered by the military. That's because Gary wasn't content with just messing with the files. He also left text in random places, which contained anti-American messages. And since it had just been through 9/11, the government as a whole was hell-bent on fixing any and all glitches in his servers. And Gary's messages caused a lot of internal discord, because they thought he was one of their allies making fun of them in a dumbass way, right? However, over time, someone realized that this person could in fact be from off-site. So, motivated by the hatred over the attacks, the Army was finally able to track down and identify Gary McKinnon, who at that point had already caused nearly $1 million in damages, which at the time was worth much more than $1 million today, right? Arrest. Gary McKinnon was leaving his house one day when he was surrounded and arrested by a British government cybercrime unit. Once convicted, he tried to justify his actions, saying that he was trying to find out if 9/11 was something that was engineered by the US government itself. However, this excuse was not enough for the US Army and its government to arrest him. Was it? They came to see Gary's existence as an offense, as he was able to live like a parasite for over a year inside their network, unnoticed, even showing a certain incompetence on part of the Army, right? Gary was pretty good at what he did. However, we are talking about an army with the biggest budget in the world, being invaded by a single person in his computer for over a year. So you can understand that there was a certain gap in the system. We can even say a certain weakness, right? As a result, he suffered a veritable witch hunt by the United States government. Gary was convicted and found guilty by 14 US states, receiving 8 charges that would guarantee him about 80 years in prison, which would practically make him spend the rest of his life in jail, right? However, as he ended up being held in England, it was the trial there that really counted. So, despite being convicted, the Scotsman gained freedom from imprisonment and a parole, and during that time, he was banned from using any computer with internet access. He was required to report to the British authorities daily, and he couldn't leave his house at night. See? Persecution. It's just as I said before, right? The US government did not want to accept Gary's existence in the world. It was just too offensive for them to have someone like that alive. Because of this, even after Gary had already been tried and served a sentence in England, the US government did not rest, spending days and nights looking for ways to validate an extradition request, where Gary had to face long and arduous battles in a judicial war so that he would not be sent to the United States, where he could even get a life sentence by that point. Because they were, of course, getting more and more irritated by the idea of his parole, right guys? This started in 2005. However, their legal war only came to a definitive end in 2012, when after much insistence on the part of the US government, who still continued to send new ones despite several extradition requests refused, the government of England finally took a stand, preventing new orders from being applied to Gary's case, who came out victorious in a way, right? Because, well, the years of life he gained in freedom must have been lost during the stress of almost 8 years of non-stop processes, right? After winning his freedom, Gary realized that this whole affair had turned him into one of the most famous hackers in history. Thus, he was able to reinvent his career, working as a consultant, acting as a kind of hacker guru there, who helped large companies and even governments to protect themselves from intrusions by hackers like him. Well, no one better than a person who already did the thing once to help you on how to not let it happen again. But guys, I'm going to ask you to calm down now, okay? Sit if you are standing and lie down if you are sitting, because this is where Gary's story gets really interesting. Bombastic revelations. During the time he was hacking into government computers, Gary McKinnon snooped around a lot and had access to an unimaginable amount of classified government documents, even high-ranking archives. As he spent a year inside the government network, Gary quickly fulfilled his objective of trying to understand the government's participation in the 9/11 attacks. And because of that, in the overtime, he was looking for a new interest to investigate. One of the topics that he was most curious about involved the rumors that the United States government, as well as many others around the world, already saw information and even specimens of extraterrestrial life, such as bodies, alien ships, and all these things, right? Rumors suggested that these things were stored in top-secret hangars. He, like many people at the time, and even today, believe that such governments do this type of practice because they believe that the global population is not ready to receive this type of information, and that the social commotion generated by such a revolution could bring dark consequences to people's lives and could even cause the ruin of several societies around the world. Thus, the theory believes that the government is keeping this information secret to kind of save the population from rebelling, getting nervous, and a lot of other things, right? Throughout history, several testimonies from former military and government officials contributed to the idea of the theory, such as that of Miss Haley's. A woman who had worked at NASA in the 1970s revealed that she saw employees at Building 8 at Johnson Space Center in Texas edit some images, which were captured there by satellites, to remove the UFOs present before the photos could be taken, revealed to the public. According to Donna Haley, she would have seen images that would show that there are cities built on the dark side of the moon, as well as spaceships landed and flying over the lunar surface. This ended up causing Gary to develop a quick interest in the subject when he was clear on his intrusions there, where he went directly to the computers connected to the servers in Building 8. Findings. According to Gary, it was absurdly simple to gain access to NASA servers, and on them, he found high-resolution files that had been processed digitally, but also a lot of original stuff. Gary said he found some very strange photos, such as one that showed a large structure which was cylindrical in shape and was surrounded by a pair of domes that had been found in the northern hemisphere. He also revealed that he had access to Navy spreadsheets, which detailed the transport of cargo between manned space stations by U.S. Air Force non-terrestrial officers, as well as the list with the names of 30 of these non-terrestrial military, right? Also, the respective patents. Gary said that the US government itself had some warships that stay in orbits, and they have been dubbed by the USSS LeMay and the USSS Highly Counter. The USS is the name given to the Navy ships of the United States, and the extra S of these cases made Gary imagine that they would be referring to the United States spaceship, which translates to spacecrafts of the United States. Controversies. Despite all this, there are still many people who question the veracity of the information brought by Gary, mainly because he built a career on top of his bombastic revelations, right? Which could have been very well forged just to further his fame. What doesn't help Gary's case is the fact that even though he's a hacker in the digital world, he didn't store any proof of what was said, especially in the case of aliens and UFOs. No documents or even a single photo. And since Gary was known to be someone who played pranks and lied a lot, the veracity of the facts he presented fell into question for many people. However, he still maintains a strong community with thousands of people who believe on what he said. It is true that even today, these stories divide opinions, right? How about you leave yours there in the comments? Do you think this part about the UFOs is real? In fact, he was a hacker. In fact, he invaded and got access to precious information over there. But has he exaggerated his tale or not? What do you think? Thank you for watching this video, and we'll be stopping here. A hug, take care, and thanks.